the Vince McMahon scandal. And I know we've already talked about this ad nauseum in the past 2 years with the NDAs, and that whole thing came out in the summer of 2022. Obviously, this kind of being dredged up again because we now know what one of those NDAs is about. God forbid what the other NDAs are about. Probably something similar. I kind of cringe to think what those other NDAs could entail, and maybe in due time we'll find out, unfortunately. If it involves illegal activity, if not, then maybe not. I'm not sure. I mean, time will tell on that front. But the lawsuit that was filed mere days after WWE announced that Raw is headed to Netflix, which I'll ask you about momentarily, but we got to talk about this first. A former employee filing a lawsuit against WWE, John Laurinaitis, and Vince McMahon over, so she had signed an NDA previously, and the only reason this is coming out is because he failed to kind of comply to the agreement of the deal, of the NDA, and paying her whatever he agreed to pay her. He didn't do that. That was a year ago, almost exactly. And here we are. And she filed a lawsuit, and involving a lot of gory, disgusting, just horrific details about stuff that goes on in the company's culture. At least at that time, I can't speak to now, obviously. Endeavor quickly parting ways with Vince on Friday, publicly making the comment, listen, this guy is no longer affiliated with us in TKO or WWE. And so that was that. Of course, the issue isn't completely solved until we find out more about what happened, who else was involved, how we can avoid this sort of stuff in the future, without getting into really the details of what everything was. The lawsuit is public online. You can read the whole thing. Just be advised, it gets pretty gross, obviously. But just give me your 2 cents. I already talked about it briefly in other forums, but I want to get your 2 cents on this whole thing and kind of what it means for WWE going forward.
Yeah, I guess it just, reading it, like you said, it's just crazy. I just don't even know how you even think of this, how this shit even goes down. Like multiple other parties being involved in it, like you said, John Laurinaitis and other people. There's some other names that were on there just where they weren't named specifically, but it's crazy. I know Vince has had a history of this, like even back in the early 90s, so maybe this seems just like a run of pattern of behavior. He had all those issues in the 90s before the Sturra trial. Once they got the plane, there were rumors that he had like private meetings with the divas on the plane, all these NDAs. The guy just seems like a straight sex pervert. So I'm glad he's gone. He stepped down, so that's good. They definitely have to look into it more. Like you said, it's just not him specifically, but Laurinaitis and anyone else. But I think the first only positive is he's finally gone. At this point, I don't think there's any chance he comes back. I don't know why you'd even want to even try to do that. But I think getting him away from the company is the first step. And then just kind of looking into it more. Obviously, any other NDA, unless he didn't pay those or did any other malpractice to kind of void those, then we probably won't hear anything else. But just knowing him, he probably won't keep paying, and we'll hear more about Vince shitting on people. So definitely not a good thing. He could have just if he was somewhat of a smart person, which I figured he would be, he would just pay the NDA and it would never have come out. But I think he thought they were like Calgary or LA and just stopped paying and people would just accept it. But this woman took him to task, and now he looks like a fucking maniac. So
yeah, no, seriously.
It's just terrible stuff, but I'm glad he's away from the company.
Yeah, no, I think it is worth... I forgot to mention this part of the story. So, this dropped on Thursday of last week. It's been... It feels like it's been a fucking month, but this dropped 7 days ago. And the first domino to kind of fall here... Endeavor put out a statement. WWE, I don't know if they said anything publicly themselves. TKO did, /Endeavor. And they had said, we take these things very seriously. We're going to have an internal investigation. Pretty, boilerplate PR stuff, obviously. But they said nothing about parting ways with Vince. And obviously, at the end of the day, it is a law. I don't doubt any of this stuff happened. And Vince's spokesperson came out and said, yeah, we're going to, aggressively defend ourselves against these false claims, blah, blah, blah. They can't just dump Vince without knowing there is any sort of credence to those claims. Within a day, though, they quickly parted ways with him. They quickly distanced themselves from Vince. Do you think they would still have him on the board internally investigating, quote unquote, which, by the way, there was already an internal investigation of Vince 2 years ago when he was first, when he first resigned, and the investigation still went on, and I don't know what the definitive results of that investigation were, but obviously I mean, the entire board did not want him back. They unanimously voted against Vince coming back, and he forced himself back into the company anyway. I mean, obviously, it's a common theme, apparently, with him with forcing stuff, which is just fucking gross. The guy's just a maniac, like you said. But, you know, he still found his way back in the company. And I don't know, I mean, they surely had to have known, had some sort of knowledge of the situation and how bad it was. And whether that be TKO, whether that be other people on the board, whether that be Triple H, Stephanie. I mean, Stephanie left the company as soon as Vince came back in early 2023. And it's not like they haven't been questioned about it. I mean, these aren't really things that, I mean, I guess you could ask it during one of those press conferences. They're not going to say anything. We may never know, honestly. Like, Stephanie may never come out about it. Someone close to the situation may never reveal exactly why that was. You can kind of read between the lines as to why she probably wanted nothing to do with her own father. Maybe Triple H as well. That's his father-in-law. I mean, the guy said during the press conference he didn't read the lawsuit, which is pretty fucking dumb to say that publicly. He probably should have just said no comment. But anyway, as far as Vince goes, what I was going to say was the first domino to kind of fall was the fact that Slim Jim pulled out of the pay-per-view for Saturday. They said, we're not going to be sponsoring WWE in light of the recent Vince allegations. And then as soon as TKO announces on Friday night, right before SmackDown goes live, that Vince is no longer part of the company, they say in their own words, we're re-entering the Rumble on Saturday morning, and they're back on the show. I mean, it really comes down to all the sponsorship stuff. We saw 5-6 years ago, too, at the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal. They were going to call it the Fabulous Moolah. Yeah, that's what it was. The Fabulous Moolah Invitational. And then people kind of dredged up all the shit that she had done over the years, which a lot of it was already public knowledge. But it's like the dark side of the ring thing with Ric Flair, where a lot of what he did was already public knowledge, but it was dredged up again, and justifiably so, and kind of painted him in a better light, and more people who weren't previously aware of how gross he is as a human are now aware, and same thing with Moolah. And I think it was, I want to say Snickers they had pulled out of the pay-per-view. I don't know if it was them or it wasn't. It was pre-Slim Jim. It was one of those type of companies. It was a candy bar or something. It was Snickers, okay. And they had pulled out, and then when they renamed the Battle Royal, they, rethought about it, and they joined the pay-per-view again. So, honestly, at the end of the day, it is a money thing. That comes down to any company. But I think when you start to threaten their sponsors, I mean, you and I can say anything as far as, like, they don't give a fuck. Fans can say anything online, on Twitter, whatever. I mean, they do care about their public image, especially during such a huge week last week with all this stuff being announced. But I think it really comes down to the sponsorships, and when that shit starts to pull out, then they're having an issue. With Vince no longer being part of the company, I mean, they're not completely in the clear yet, but I don't think they have to worry about that.
No, I mean, it's honestly sad when it comes to business, but that's just the way it is. Like, they weren't going. Vince would still be there if Slim Jim didn't back out. Mm-hmm. Like, it is. I mean, it's like you said. The quote you was honestly disgusting. That like they back something like that. But, like, once, sponsor's going to pull out, then they have to, like, distance themselves. Like, it shouldn't come to that. It's like, just do the right thing. But within business, it's just, like, they're so worried about, like, losing money and sponsorships. Like, that's what literally puts them over the edge, which it's just ridiculous, honestly. Like, this guy's clearly a sex pervert, and, like, move on from him. Like, you shouldn't have to, like, a sponsor pulling out shouldn't be like, oh, yep, now we got to do it. Like, just do the right thing. I just don't know why you have to wait until, like, all this bad PR comes out to finally, get rid of him. But it's just the way the companies work, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think one of the more worrisome things for me as well, reading most of the lawsuit, was that a lot of this stuff had happened just recently. I mean, it did happen over the course of a couple years from, like, 2018, 2019. But still, we're talking, early 2020s. We're not talking 2006. And there's been stuff about Vince, like you said, for decades, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, and the limousine incident, and the spray tan incident. I think it was at a tanning salon or something like that. There's been a lot of incidents about Vince where he's been able to escape unscathed every single time, not even including the steroid trial, which he was able to escape unscathed from that decades ago and keep his company intact and remain in power, blah, blah, blah. But this stuff was literally, if what she's saying is true, and again, I have no reason to doubt because it was pretty specific as far as what went down, the timeline is pretty exact. This was all like 2 years ago. He stopped refusing to pay when he was already back in the company a year ago. Like, what are we fucking doing here? I mean, again, how many people actually knew about it? We don't know. But obviously, one of the people that was allegedly involved, they weren't outright named in the lawsuit, was a former WWE, UFC heavyweight champion. Reports came out, I think it was either from Fightful or PW Insider, I forget the source exactly, that people within the company had confirmed it, not even said they believed. I mean, the wording is pretty, read between the lines. It's Brock Lesnar. And that part of the deal of him re-signing back in 2021 when he came back to the company at SummerSlam and had this whole great kind of resurgence of a career, part of that was sleeping with this woman that was an employee of WWE, that Vince and John Laurinaitis and all these other kind of weirdos were already having their way with. And essentially what she's accusing them of is sex trafficking. So he was kind of involved in this as well. They did say talent, so I don't know if they just mean Brock, if there's other people involved. I mean, again, there might be more that comes out about this that has an effect on other people. But honestly, I mean, for as much as we've all enjoyed this recent run of Brock dating back to 2021, that unfortunately, I guess, came together because of this, or at least that was a factor, spawning until SummerSlam of last year, I honestly don't see how Brock can even be brought back after this. I think we may have seen the last of him in WWE. Because even if, he's not the type of person to come out and apologize. But again, this stuff is pretty bad where I'm not even really sure he can come back from it.
No, I think he's done at this point. I mean, unless he can clear his name somehow, I think just what's come out, I just don't see him coming back anytime. I don't think he's ever coming back.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you said, unless he can clear his name, unless it's not true, or it was referring to someone else, which it doesn't seem all that likely. Or, I mean, again, if it is true, I just don't see how they can justify bringing him back. They don't need Brock Lesnar on the show. They never really needed him. Obviously, he's one of their biggest stars. But they have to distance themselves from him. And the funny thing is that Triple H, I guess it's all about semantics. He said he didn't read the lawsuit, but he must have been aware of it enough to not bring in Brock. I mean, that wasn't... He's the... I mean, he fucking knows these things. He was supposed to be in the Rumble. I mean, I can almost guarantee you he was going to be in the Rumble. I know the report was he was going to be in there instead of Braun Breaker. And they didn't end up putting him in the match, and now he's not a part of WrestleMania, and he probably won't be a part of anything moving forward. So, the whole situation sucks. Hopefully, moving forward they can, and it sounds, just like a generic answer, but they need to avoid this sort of stuff going forward and kind of adapt the company culture, not having sex perverts like Laurinaitis and Vince there. I don't doubt there were other people involved. They got to find this shit out and get rid of them too, and kind of pay better, close attention to this. I mean, obviously, this was not the only woman this had happened to. That's not confirmed, but if there's all these other NDAs about there, I can't imagine these NDAs are about just nothing. So, pretty horrific shit, but at least they're kind of starting slowly to move forward from it. But on that same note, before we move forward, one last thing on that subject. From the press conference, Triple H addressing it, I already talked to you about it privately, and I already talked about it publicly, because I had asked Bailey a question, and, maybe it could have been about that, or not about Vince specifically, but again, I've already talked about that. But, it was more about Triple H getting asked about it, and he did multiple times. Now, obviously, he was never going to really say anything. I'm not saying that he was going to divulge. He was like, oh, yeah, Vince has always been a sex pest, blah, blah, blah. Can you imagine? Obviously, no shit. Some of these times, sometimes you just have, with a situation this big, I would say, you should probably at least ask about it, get a no comment, move on. He was asked about it. He didn't say no comment. He did dance around it, did the Tony Khan dance around it. And these are questions legally he might not be able to answer. I get it. I think my biggest issue with his responses was that he said he would rather focus on the positives, which honestly, like I've said elsewhere, if we were talking about, if I was shitting on the booking to him and he doesn't want to talk about the negatives of the show, just the positives, I would still probably have an issue with it, but whatever, it's wrestling. Who cares? It's fake shit. Who cares? But we're talking about a very serious situation here, and I think they did him, whether it be Triple H himself, the company, the PR, I don't know, whoever had been in charge of him going out there and talking about it. I mean, at the end of the day, he's the boss. So, I mean, this was really on him. He should have started the thing addressing it. But the thing is, they probably didn't want to address it on their own YouTube stream without someone already asking about it. But he had to know someone was going to ask about it. Maybe they hoped someone wouldn't. I don't know. He probably should have had a statement prepared, is my point. Address it and move on and not ask or not answer anything about it, because I thought the answer he gave was just pretty dumb.
Yeah, I think it should have just been, like I said, I'm not sure if it's his words, what TKO wanted him to say, someone from PR. I just feel like he should have just opened up. Honestly, what they really should have done is he should have been the first one to talk.
Yeah.
And then it's just been like, hey, guys, obviously I know what's going on. Legally, unfortunately, we're not allowed to talk about it. Vince no longer with the company.
Yeah, no, he didn't even say that. He didn't even say that
Vince
was no longer there.
He should have come up and addressed it first. Kind of set the room, hey, obviously would have, I don't know if, like you said, illegally you can talk about it. I don't know why you really couldn't. I mean, It's public knowledge at this point, but I don't know, just say something like that. obviously what happen's awful. Like I said, I don't even know if you can even say that. But like obviously, like we want to like talk about like our performers tonight, like the great night that they had. Not talk about like the stuff that it's gonna. I don't know. He should have just addressed it head on. I think the non-answer, like, it's not like I expect him to say anything, but I felt like I thought they would have something like conjured up to like that. Like illegally, we can't talk about it. I understand you have to. You're gonna like. You're a journalist. You're gonna bring it up, but like we can't talk about that and just talk to our performers about like the great night we had.
Yeah,
something like acknowledging it, denouncing it, and then just being like, we get it, but like talking to Bayley, like she just had one of her biggest moments. Imagine like I feel like asking her about it is just unfair to her. Like it's like trumping her. Obviously the news does trump everything that happened, but like it's trumping her moment, and it kind of sucks. So
no, I agree. Yeah.
I think they should have just he should have been the first one out there and addressed it. I mean, I liked Cody's answer for what he could say. It's not like I mean, he was even with the company when this shit happened, so I don't like.
Yeah.
I feel like he answered the best he could, but even that, I think it's kind of like an unfair question. Like, what do you want him to do? Like, I don't know. It is what it is. I just think Triple H should have been the first one out there to address it, and they could have kind of kiboshed everyone else and kind of like had a better answer than I just want to worry about the positives. It's like you're just neglecting all the bad things that happen. Like I get it. Like at least he's not along with the company. I think the Tony Khan stuff, like Jericho's still there. He's still being booked and stuff. So it's like I think that's like okay, you haven't gotten this roster like da da da. At least Vince at that point had already stepped down, but I think it still should have been addressed on the top.
No, I think that just would have been smarter. And again, maybe they had to have known they were going to be asked about it. That's my thing.
They had to know they were going to get asked about it. I mean, come on. It's literally the fucking biggest thing going on. If they didn't think that, they're fucking dumb.
No, seriously. And you had to know who was going to be in the room, too. Because if it's like some people like that ask the softer questions, which I can understand. Some people asked about, is this the greatest era in wrestling and stuff like that? Probably not the best time for that, but it is what it is. Then, yeah, maybe. But, like, Nick Hausman was sitting right there. They invited him to this thing. They knew he was going to ask about it. John Alba, who I think does a great job, too, he was actually the first one to ask about it. And it's not like they don't know that these people are going to ask about it when they give them the mic. You've been to these things. You know, they give people the mic. It's not like it's a draw like where it's not up to them. No, it is completely up to the company who gets to ask a question. Byron's not really picking. It's kind of the PR team who kind of picks people to ask questions. They knew what these people were going to ask, and they knew it was going to be asked. And Triple H isn't dumb. He's seen a lot of these people before. So, I don't know. They really, like you said, though, I think that the top takeaway, in addition to everything you said, I completely agree. I just don't really think it was fair to Bayley or Cody. I mean, Cody's one thing because he's kind of the face of the company. I can almost understand that. Like, Bayley has nothing to do with this. I mean, obviously she's worked with Vince, so it's not like the exact same thing as like, I don't know, like the owner of like the Red Sox gets canceled or something, and then I'm asking you all about it, like asking like, what the fuck, like how would you even know? You know what I'm saying? Like that's just I don't know.
That's the thing I feel like with Cody. It's like it's not like that's like saying like I got a new job at this business, and as I get there, they're like, oh yeah, the guy that used to own this place is a fucking pervert and freak. Like, what do you think? I don't know. I don't really know. Like obviously he knows Vince, but like when all this stuff was going down, he was not working for the company. Like yeah, I know he came back and stuff, but it's like. Most of the stuff was during COVID and right after. I guess Cody came back in, 2020? Yeah,
2022,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so, like, even some of the stuff was in 21, so it's like, he wasn't even around. So, like I said, I feel like he is, like, the face, like, the verbal face of the company, but, like, I don't know. I just feel like it's unfair to him because, like, he wasn't around.
No, I think it would have been a more appropriate question for someone like John Cena, who knows Vince and has worked with Vince and has publicly defended Vince before. As recently as like a year ago, when he was like, oh yeah, people make mistakes. It's like, dude, you're not wrong, but coming off of this sort of stuff, which obviously I would assume he didn't know about, I would hope. I mean, this guy was seen in public having dinner with Vince. I mean, it was Cena, what a fucking motley crew. It was like 2 years ago, I think, right after Vince left the company for his birthday or for someone's birthday. Yeah, for Vince's birthday. It was Vince, Cena, Taker, Brock, and then maybe someone else, but like Brock.
I think Pat McAfee was there too.
Dude, I mean, what a fucking crew! I mean, I can't imagine they're having quote unquote guy talk talking about this sort of stuff, but still, I mean, like you attach your horse to someone like that. I don't know. I feel like a lot of these, at least for those people, I'm not talking about like the Baileys and even the Codys. I'm talking about people that know Vince and people like Jericho who have commented on it before. And Jericho, I've seen clips of him kind of defending Vince. It's like, oh yeah, he didn't really do anything illegal. It's like, well, he definitely shouldn't have done it. Like, I don't know. Some of the stuff these people say are fucking stupid. I mean, you shouldn't, if they're them, you can't expect to be asked about it because it doesn't really have to do much with them, but don't defend this guy. I mean, even at that point, it was pretty slimy behavior, even before we found out the details of it. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens on that front and what else kind of comes out about it. But for right now, it's a terrible situation, and hopefully they can kind of, I don't want to say bring justice to it, but hopefully stuff like this doesn't happen again with the new regime going forward.